We're part of the public now. This is a very as we're getting deeper into this series, I wanted to get into infrastructure. Last week we got into infrastructure. We got into the circumstance or the circumventing circumstances and what that leads to. Before that, we got into the memorializing of your mortality. This week, I want to tap into and talk about. I want to get into our bag when it comes into emotional impotence. The difference between creating infrastructure versus emotional impotence or energetic impotence, or the inability to regulate emotion, the inability to regulate the flows or the structures of emotion, versus the actual building out of infrastructure. I want to get into this in this aspect when we're talking about our emotional cadences, that emotional rhythm, moving in that space, throwing out some of these nice little key features. But I want to get into today I want to get into emotional impotency versus infrastructure. The art of provision. The art of provision. What it is to put together the infrastructure. Y'all heard me last week. I talked about infrastructure. Last week we got into infrastructure. Last week we got into that infrastructure. You feel what I'm saying? Last week we got into that infrastructure. Last week, last week we got into that infrastructure. This week we are going to be getting into, last week we got into infrastructure. This week we're going to be getting into, what's up, bro? This week we're going to get into the difference of, I had to understand, in me not being confident with myself. One second. Space, and we understand in ourselves as we making these movements and you're expanding into your growth. We understand the aspect of, okay, cool, I'm growing. We understand the space of I'm growing. We understand the aspects of we're learning. I always talk about with my clients. I always talk about in class. I always talk about in the classes. We always talk about in classes and sessions, the building out of that space. What that space means, shifting from the what to think, the how to think versus what to think model, the how to feel versus the what to feel model. And a lot of the things that we've done inside that space based on that provision. What we are providing, what energy we are providing to a space energetically, and what we're providing it for. We never really talk about how many things we use in enhancements. We never talk about the enhancement. We never talk about what it is enhancing, or this is a lot of times we think about from the traumatic and the unresolved, the enhancement. From whatever we're putting into that space, whatever we've learned inside of that space, what is it enhancing? What is that enhancement? Is this enhancing my inability to have a conversation certain ways? Is this enhancement based on my lack of assertiveness? Is this enhancement based on my lack of the ability to communicate a certain way? Is this enhancement based on me not being able to apologize, not being able to thoroughly communicate, comprehend? A lot of these things that we do inside of these spaces when we're building onto the pageantry of spirituality, consciousness, that concept, these aspects, a lot of those facilities create impotency. That means without you saying, how many times can you go into a space without saying that you're an occultist? Or without you having to say I'm an occultist? How many spaces can you get into? How far does your voice, how far does your energy travel without saying that you're spiritual? Without saying that you're an occultist? Without saying that you're conscious? Without saying that you're woke? Without saying that you're a witch? Without saying that you're a warlock? Without saying all of these things? Without having to attach those attributes to something. See, the thing about living in the unresolved space with ourselves, living in that unresolved, living in the traumatic frequency with yourself, is you've learned how to attach attributes to your trauma. You can be working the same. I've worked in the same field of work for 15 plus years. And the only thing that I had to attach to it was usually always the negative shit. I'm working this job because of this. I'm in this place because of this. I have to do this because of this. I have to be this way because of this. I have to do this because of this. I'm living my life over here because of these people. And I can't depend on people. I'm doing this because of this. I'm doing this because of this. But we never really say what it is. Half of the reason you do half of the shit that you do is because escape. So that job is to escape. That job is to escape. So since you've been using your job as an escape point, anything you do in regards to cultivating energy in that way is going to be still based on escape. So now, instead of you doing the job based on escape, guess what you're doing now? What you're doing instead of the job being an escape? The job is no longer an escape. Now, everything you're doing that you perceive as a job or as a way to bring in currency or cultivate that energy, guess what? Guess what it is? It's an escape. So you're using it as an escape. Yes, you can attach things to it. Yes, you can attach things to it. Don't get me wrong. Yes, you can attach things to it. But the only way that those things exist inside of that space, we understand energetically, is based on the infrastructure that was created for it. It's based on the infrastructure that was created for it. So if I'm inside of, like, I used that as an example. We talked about it last week. In my aspects for myself, everything that I do is no longer based on circumventing. I am now able to supplement my abilities in the things that I do, my daily disciplines, my daily works. I'm able to supplement them into different spaces. I'm able to use, since I now have my brand, my platform of my brand and my platform, literally and figuratively. I have my brand, my platform, my systems, my standards of operations, my mission statement. These aspects that you learn in the aspect we talk about business in the occult or the science to it. I'm able to supplement what I do into multiple streams of spaces. I'm able to supplement my thought process of how I process things into multiple tiers and bolster into multiple realities. I'm no longer stuck in, everything got to be this. That's going to drain you out. You're doing no more, no less than your work. You know what I'm saying? You're doing no more, no less than the work that you're in. But when you're not accustomed to being able to move in the directions and shift between the dualities, you're not going to be able to just adjust in love. Like, oh my God, I woke up and I didn't feel like doing nothing today. But me doing nothing today actually gave me a chance to recharge. And I ended up watching a YouTube video, watching a podcast, listening to a podcast, listening to an audio book, or I was watching some reels, and it gave me some real key good content for future podcast episodes. I was reading this and looking at this, and I noticed that there's not a big market marketed towards men in spiritual self-care in the aspect of products that are designed to enhance the spiritual work that we do. Instead of me looking at it, this is the key. This is the key to the aspect of the art of provision. The art of provision, the new infrastructure versus the emotional impotence or the energetic impotence. When I'm looking at things now, I no longer look at things through the lens of conspiracy. I've been through that phase. I've been thoroughly through the phase of conspiracy. I no longer look at things as I no longer look at things as people are going to think of me as a scammer or I'm trying to sell some fucking. I don't longer look at it through those things. I look at things through the purity of my darkness. I look at things through the purity of my darkness. That means anything that I'm taking on, anything that I'm bringing into my space is filtering through my infrastructure. So by the time it gets to the source, which is me in that space, when it gets to me, it comes to me exactly as it comes to me. I can accept as this information comes to me. I'm not looking at it through the eyes of, and I'm also, i.e., able to identify the eyes in which it is coming through. This is one of the major factors in you doing the internal work and you doing the healing work aspect. You're not doing any of this to stay within the same positions. You're not doing any of this as a calling card. A lot of times when we think about the spiritual work, we think about the conscious community, you're trying to use it as a calling card. So you're trying to use that as a calling card. Okay, cool, I'm spiritual, so you're spiritual. What do you think about this? So you only talk about things that are in the spiritual realm. You only speak about things in the spiritual realm through a sense of bypass. You're not used to speaking of things in the spirit. You're not used to taking things from understanding, the compassion, that anything that I do in the spiritual aspect, the invisible, the unseen, the unfamiliar, the unknown, I am creating the mirrored catalyst in the physical form. So how would that look to me? Not how it looks to everybody else. How would it look to me? How would it look if I use as an example, if you look at my nails, duality practice on my nails, clear coat on my, duality practice on my nails. How does this translate for me? I understand down to this science, and this is the key. This is another key we're going to build out on this. The major key of you doing the work is that it becomes seamless to everything that you do. Your integration is seamless. Me understanding that the middle fingers represents point to Saturn, is the mood of the point to Saturn. Me understanding that my alignment to Chronos, i.e. Saturn, i.e. Lucifer, i.e. Satan, all those aspects, me being Papa Lucifer Samdi, all of these aspects that line up, they all seamlessly, I'm not trying to make I'm not trying to make it presentable. That will hinder my transparency. That hinders the transparency in which I teach. That hinders the understanding vulnerability. Something that I teach and I coach and I advise and I do the sessions with it would go against everything that I'm in alignment with. I'm not talking about, there's a difference between things going against what's in line with you and things going in opposition. Things going in opposition are always, things that are in opposition to you are always in an inverted sense for you to learn from. Things that go against create an impeding so you're not able to discern the choice. You're not able to use discernment for the choice. I'm going to give you an example. Think about the position you get in when you hot and bothered. You hot and you in the mood. You hot. You haven't had that touch in a minute. Or you haven't rubbed one out or released in a minute. If you do not understand where that energy is at within inside of self, maybe that energy is in your root chakra. Maybe every time you think about getting off or releasing, you're thinking about grounding. You don't understand. You're looking for a space to be secure. So how does it translate into the outside aspects of yourself? It translates as insecurity. You don't understand how it corresponds. It's going to translate as insecurity. Until you've dealt with those insecurities inside of that root space, you're not going to be able to act in a secure way. So even the way that you do things, you're going to create the resistances to keep you from going outside of that space. But the things that you learned inside of that space, the skill sets, remember we talked about skill sets yesterday, the skill sets in which you were able to perform in that space are going to look very, very convincing, very, very familiar. So now anything that's coming into that space based on the skill set, you're going to try to use it in that space. Here's the thing. The things that are unfamiliar to you, the most unfamiliar, they're going to be able to use that skill set, that person, place, idea, whatever it may be. They're only there to show you how the expansion of that skill set. But if you're insecure, guilt, not really, you haven't practiced being confident, self-care routines out of whack, you're not used to actually being inside of that space. When it comes to that space, the moment that you're going to go through the stages of, you're going to try to debunk whatever it is. You're going to put it inside of a certain position, debunk whatever it is. You're going to try to compare yourself to it the entire time. So whatever it is, you're trying to compare yourself to it. You're trying to connect to it and stuff. You're trying to do everything that your old skill set apprehended you to be. That's what causes the impedingness. Because all that leads, everything you're doing is taking away choice. And the reason that it's taking away choice is because you're not comprehending. You're either communicating on one end or you're comprehending on the other end. You're trying to comprehend it while communicating, or you're trying to communicate it when you should be trying to comprehend it. Why am I in this space? What is this space originally for? I see this space as a space of what was this space given to me directly? This is a thing that stops a lot of us in a lot of our positions. We're not looking at things through the direct paradigm of thought. You're not looking at things through a direct sense. You're used to looking at things indirectly. That's why the relationship worked the way it worked. That's why the job works the way it worked. Because you're used to getting information indirect. You said at a point in time, the moment that you said, I need to know myself. The moment that you picked up that book and it was like, know thyself, and you started saying that shit inside of your space, it worked. Because it aligned everything into your space to know yourself. It aligned everything in your space to direct you into the attributes of what you need to be doing on yourself. Every little spell that you did, every little jar spell, every little freezer spell that you did, you should have been doing to yourself. I tell clients that all the time. You should have been doing it to yourself. It's not as we go through the process, but yes, you have to understand, I should have been doing that to myself. I should have been putting myself on ice. I should have put myself in the jar. I should have put myself in a position, but you wouldn't dare do that. You wouldn't dare put yourself in that position because it would expose you to not being able to perform at the point in which you're used to performing. This is what emotional impotence is. You are stuck in a constant state for the fear of creating a new infrastructure, for the fear of the success, what even deducing a new infrastructure would mean. You are stuck in a state of emotional impotence. Meaning every time you're told to perform, you're so used to being told to perform that you're waiting for the cues to perform. You're so used to performing that you're only used to looking for the cues in which to perform in. Based on what you've learned. I'm an occultist. I know magic. I'm going to wait for the instances and the chances to perform inside of those spaces. But you notice that every time you try to go back to trying to do it again, once you did, let's say you got 5 off. Let's say you got 5 shots off. You don't know your energetic structure. You don't know your energetic structure. You're used to being told what to think and what to feel. So let's use this as a cadence as an example. They say scientifically inside of the space, they say after 35, women shouldn't be trying to have kids. After 35, they're called I forgot the name of the type of birth. Geritol births. After 35, you shouldn't be trying to have kids. That's based on a system in order for that to work, everything else in that system is in alignment to it. That means heart disease, that means the eating, the diet, everything. When you read most of this shit, anyway, most of those diets, most of those human research studies are based on 35 to 60-year-old white people, white women and white men. Already. The system and construct is set to that aspect. Since you want to be the conspiracy theorist, but this is the key. You don't understand. The reason that you keep bucking against the system is because you don't understand the system. Therefore, you cannot create a new system. You are not willing to create a new infrastructure because you have become so attuned to this infrastructure. It's the reason why motherfuckers are called Shaq a whole fucking coon, but Shaq is doing exactly what he is supposed to be doing in that space. Shaq just sign up for anything. He's doing exactly what he's supposed to be doing for himself. His infrastructure was based on when his accountant and his manager the first time was like, yo, you ain't got any money. You need to start investing. And then going through the process of investing. So he's going through his process. You trigger by it because it's not benefiting you. You see how you create the intimate issue. You have intimacy issues with yourself. So of course anybody outside of you that looks like you, that moves like you in the sense of gesture, they should be gesturing towards you. They should be making gestures towards you. Because you have intimacy issues with yourself. There is nothing outside of me. There's nothing outside of me that I need. That I need somebody to do. There is nothing outside of me that I need somebody to do. That I'm not willing to, and we're not talking about going through the suffering aspect. That I'm not talking about, and this is the main key to this aspect of this space. We're not talking about from the angle of I cannot depend on others. We're not talking about from the angle of if every time I never get the same shit in return. We're not talking about those things. We're talking about energetically, based on me and my level of energy, how I exchange energy. When I exchange energy, my energy exchange is full with the intentions and the affirmations in the aspects of my energy. Therefore, when I create spaces, whenever an issue erupts, whenever something happens, an issue erupts, there's an issue. I'm not saying there won't be little small tweaks that need to be done, because that's what everything, tweaks need to be done as you're adjusted into the real life world. But in that space, the conversation in which is had is based on a comprehension of something that's already present. See, most of the time, the aspect that stops us from having a conversation that will stop you from building in a certain way is because you have not built out an infrastructure that is absolute. 9 times out of 10, the thing that stops you from going further inside of a space, that should push you inside of a space, move you inside of that space, is based on you didn't go in there with pure intention. And what I mean by pure intention is you can state exactly why you went in there. You can make the statement, pose the statement, the question, the thought, the idea, and you can accept what is delivered back to you. This is the law of even exchange. The law of even exchange is based on the energy. I can go into a space unconfident as fuck. No confidence, no competency, no awareness. And I can say something in that space and it won't get heard. Somebody else that has a little bit more confidence, a little bit more awareness, or the actions or the gestures of awareness can go in and say that same thing. And they can get it. I can be upset. I can be upset. Yes, I can be upset. Once again, I can be upset. I can validate the feeling. But I must validate where the emotion behind that feeling is coming from. I wasn't confident. Man, I was in the mirror for 3.5 hours and still wasn't convinced before I went to bed. I knew I wasn't convinced when I went to bed because even the way that I dressed looked shaky. The attitudes and the patterns and the behaviors in which I put behind those things for myself in the aspects of those emotions seem kind of shaky. They seem shaky. Just off top in that space. So, damn, I see why I didn't settle. You feel what I'm saying? That's you haven't created the infrastructure. You're used to the performance cues. When you have become used to performance cues, that's where you become calculating in. This is where a lot of that you're always going to record shit, but what are you recording? You can have a conversation with somebody tomorrow, and in your mind, you're still playing. Guaranteed, when you go into a space and you have a conversation with somebody, every time you have a conversation, there's another recording happening in the background. And that recording is filtering through all of those thoughts. The unresolved, the resolved, all those spaces. So anything that you told yourself, man, I'm not ready for this, I don't have this, I don't have this, I don't have this, you keep putting yourself in that state, you keep putting yourself in a dead set position. Because you're used to. You're used to putting yourself in a dead set position. You're not used to putting yourself in a position of power. You're not used to putting your aspect of even how you view resources. There's three relationships, resources, and reputation. My reputation, i.e. a byproduct of my behavior and patterns and habits, create my reputation. The sum of my patterns and my habits create my relationships. The sum of my habits are what create my how I use resources. It's how I use to create resources. How I move and how I direct myself. The energetics behind that are based on my infrastructure. The infrastructure in which I've created. Once you start removing when we start removing these layers throughout the space, you start seeing that you do it all the time. The simplicity. I use an example. The simplicity for me to do a session and then go about my business and go out, take a 3-hour drive out some fucking where is something that I've always seeked. I didn't know how to get to it. Now, the only thing that can stop me inside of that space is being like, yo, well, I don't have this yet, and I don't have this yet, and I don't have this yet, and I don't have this yet, so I really can't do that. Who the fuck said I can't do that? If I'm in the space, if I'm honest, in the things that usually trigger it, I wasn't being honest. I wasn't forthcoming. I wasn't speaking up. I wasn't speaking up for the fear someone's not going to like me or understand me. I don't care about being liked. The only thing I have compassion for and the understanding and the aptitude of acceptance with is being understood. That's the only thing. If you don't understand, even to that point, if you don't understand me, you don't understand. Okay, cool. If you understand it, okay, yeah. But I'm not looking at those as definitive markers for me to be around that person. You do that shit all the time. Those are how you develop this is how we talk about in inner child healing. This is how you develop the adolescent mindset. The hyper adolescence. Most of us at a certain point in time in our lives are still demonstrating through hyper adolescence. You never had the chance to actually flourish in the emotional infrastructure. You never had the chance of developing an emotional infrastructure. You were never demonstrated an emotional infrastructure. And the infrastructure that you were shown is the infrastructure in which you are living by. That's the infrastructure in which you're living by. Outside of that infrastructure, of course, you're going to face impotence. That means that shit ain't going to work. Your skill set ain't going to work. The tears ain't going to work. This is where tears don't work in the real world. That don't work in the real world. That's because you're still trying to acquire your skill. The thing that you're trying to do only work in a certain space of disorder. But any space that you go outside that has created an infrastructure, I don't care how wild your job is. Let's put that. I don't care how wild your job is, how bad you say your job is. I talk to this with my clients all the time. I don't care how bad you think your job is. I don't care how bad you think your home life is, life with your wife, life with your partner, life at home, whatever. I don't care how wild you think or how disorganized your life is. It's in perfect order. It's in perfecting order. The reason that it is in perfecting order is because there's an end to it. There's a beginning and a middle and an end. To your job, there's a beginning, there's a middle, and an end. It is perfected. At that ending, that's when you get paid. At the beginning, that's when you clock in. In that middle is when you do that work. At that end is when you get paid. Remember, conflict, natural as shit. Friction, natural motions. These are natural points of momentum. It is what you are attaching to them and trying to make them, and it's your behavior that it's your behavior that sets the tones of how you interact inside of your job, at your job. It's your behaviors it's the behavior that creates how you interact inside of the spaces that you're going in. So it's your patterns that populate the space. So your job is a result of the population, the result of your patterns creating a population inside of that space. You feel like you're alone, you're going to be alone at work. You feel like you're alone, you're going to be alone at the job. You're going to be alone at the party. You feel like you're alone all the time, you're going to feel alone at the grocery store. You're going to feel out of place at the grocery store. You feel like you're being abandoned or you're being rejected or you're not loved or you're not cared about, you're going to see that populate inside of your space. And then your habits are what dictate it. Your habits set the tone of the dictation based on those patterns and how that energy is going to come to you. You feel what I'm saying? How you deal with it. How you deal with it. How that creates this is how you interact with the infrastructure. This is how you interact with the system. You keep trying to go into these systems as lesser than because you don't know how to negotiate with, you don't even know how to balance out your energy or negotiate with your energy. The negotiation, you don't have confidence in negotiating yourself. You've never had to do it. You've never had to make negotiations for yourself. Every contract, every conversation is a negotiation. I'm going to tell you this. Every conversation you have is a negotiation. Every conversation that you have is analytical. Every conversation, analytics, the analytical nature, the nurturing nature, all these are natural nature. All these are natural. Those are the natural aspects. It is what you are attaching to those things that is impeding on your ability to adjust and navigate as you need to navigate. Nurture what you need to nurture, navigate how you need to navigate, negotiate what you need to negotiate, move how you need to move, talk how you need to talk. You know what I'm saying? When you're so used to somebody making a negotiation for you, right, and it comes in the aspects of how you set the conversation. It comes in the tones of how you set the conversation. It comes in what you're used to. You're always going to be looking for a way to hop off. The natural condition of the humanity aspect is to seek for safety. So you're always looking for a reason to hop off. When you don't get what you want, you try to hop off. When you get what you want, you hop off. And then once you get what you want, starts to depreciate. You try to hop back on. Once what you don't get, what you're not wanting, what you weren't getting, starts to appreciate, you start to appreciate the value of being in that process, you hop back on. And you only do it to one of the two tones. You're not building the infrastructure. You're not built for that space. One of the hardest things I had to realize for myself in a lot of the spaces that I was going in at an earlier point in time was I wasn't ready for that space. The reason I could not get to that avenue, I wasn't ready for that space. I could not accept that. I couldn't accept that. And me not being able to accept that was the issue. That was the sole issue for inside. I couldn't accept it. So if I can't accept it, did I acknowledge it? What am I acknowledging? If I am not accepting of something, what am I acknowledging? What am I acknowledging? One of the wildest things that happened to me in earlier aspects of a process was I never, for example, before I fired my last job back in 2020, I always wondered why, for some reason, even when I did everything as I was supposedly supposed to do it, I never could reach to a point to where I was in the security of the job. I never could reach a certain point of being secure in whatever job I was at, in the position that I was in order for that to be the sole structure of my life. I didn't understand that then. I didn't understand it then, before that aspect, and I didn't understand it until sometime afterwards that was going against my purpose anyway. Everything that job represented was in alignment with me energetically, but it didn't represent my purpose. Everything that the job symbolized, everything that the structure was of that job, it didn't represent me. So the first thing I had to acknowledge was I wasn't used to representing myself. And when I started representing me and what I believed I was at those points in time, so I came into that knowing, I wore every bracelet to work. I put on every bracelet. I wore every necklace that I could put on and tuck under my shirt. I went every fucking time. Now, mind you, I'm working in a restaurant kitchen. It's midsummer. The only reason my locks are down now are because it's air conditioning inside of this space. But I don't like hair on my fucking neck. Shit hot. So imagine having all them neck, like 4 or 5 on my neck yeah. But because, here's the key. I thought pain in that space, I was only attaching new attributes to old trauma. I was already used to being rejected. I was used to being rejected. I was used to being separated. I was used to being alone, so to speak. I was used to those things. So if these things made me more of what I already was, why would I need to change? Why would the job need to? Why would I only seek for the job to change? Why would I want them to change their systems? Why would I have expectations of my job? Technically, the only reason I'm able to walk in here dressed like this or with these attributes on and these accessories on is because of the same thing. This is the paradox. The same thing that I don't like is the same thing that has me there in the first place. I just learned how to manipulate it in that space. I don't have an infrastructure. I don't know. But at that point in time, as I started realizing those things, I started realizing the infrastructure that I didn't have. I started learning not only the infrastructure that I did not have, but understanding how to build in contrast. One of the biggest things that I always talk about in the art of provision is build it out in contrast. Drink some water real quick. It's building out in contrast. If I was not accustomed to or used to building out in contrast, because I wasn't, I was always dead set, black, white, look at this like this, then it should be like this, and then I would make that over here, and then this would still exist against this, so now I'm stuck in one side or the other of the extremes. I'm never able to be present. I'm stuck in the extremes. I'm never able to be present. That was the biggest thing inside of that space. I was never able to be truly present. You feel what I'm saying? If I'm not used to truly being present with myself, then how do I know what's being filtered through that space when I'm not there? Of course, these are the whispers. These are the whispers at the job. These are the whispers at the family function. These are the whispers at the gas station. These are the whispers at the rest. These are the whispers that you're hearing. It doesn't matter if the whispers are true or not, or if they're being said or not. It's the simple fact that you are able the ability for, this is how we understand our abilities and not understand how to tap into our abilities. Your simple aspect of you, that is the reflection of what goes on inside of your mind anyway. If you're not one to sit with yourself, meditate, put yourself into that present state with yourself, then of course when you go outside, all you hear is whispers. Because that is conducive of your infrastructure. That's your infrastructure. Your inability to perform based on those, that's the energetic impotence. You can't perform to those whispers. Can't perform to that conversation. If you perform to that conversation, oh my God, if I say what I need to say inside of that space, everybody's going to be upset with me. What is it that you need to say? What is it that you need to say? What is it that you need to say? And before you say what you need to say, is what you're saying an expectation? And how high is your expectation based on your own standard to yourself? See, these are the questions that I had to ask myself. These are the questions that go into the aspects of that work that we do in sessions that is very important, is asking that question to yourself. If you are not accustomed to asking these types of questions, what do you think you're going to create? You're going to create a false narrative within inside of yourself. You're going to create an opening or a window into a version of yourself that you have no authority over. Who is the one that has authority over that figure? Inner child, innermost self. Anything negative is usually attached to that point. Because you're not used to operating and facilitating in the higher points with yourself. You're used to tapping into it, you're used to turning on the game, playing the game for a little bit, hopping back off. You're used to turning on the game, pick up the sticks, play for a little bit, take your mind and escape, and then go back. That's where that version of you comes out at. Don't believe me? Think about the evolution of video games. Before early video games, early 80s, early 90s, early on, you weren't creating your own players. That player, the player that you create for the game is all the attributes that you wish that you had. The avatar in which you create for your gamer tag. The avatar in which you create for Facebook, the avatar in which you create for Instagram, the identity or this image that you create for your page. How transparent is that version of you? To that avatar versus you, how transparent is that model? That's when you understand how you're creating your infrastructure. See, I use it as the example. My infrastructure is heavily is rooted in the aspects of healing, and not anything being traditional, always being in opposition. Everything I do is in contrast to the traditional way of doing things, because the traditional way I see it based on numbers. The traditional scale is only 62% effective in most cases. In my cases, in the cases as I'm building out my case log and building out my shit, I'm seeing how my shit is effective. I'm seeing the results as they are. I'm seeing the results as they are. The key of you doing the work is seeing the results in which the way they are and learning how to learn from them. Anything that I produce, anything that I put out, I'm learning from it. I'm not looking at it from the angle of, I had a session Tuesday, and one of my clients, they were talking about doing some something for money. I was like, that's the last thing you want to do it for. And as I'm listening to them inside of their session, I'm hearing all of the cadence. I'm hearing all of the pushback of where we're needing to get to. We're there, but I'm hearing all of the pushback from the inner adolescent, the hyper adolescent, that they put in position in the identities that they created off that hyper adolescent fixation. in that space for that conversation that pushed that conversation away. But I was, no. I'm not saying no. I'm not saying yes. I'm saying I want you to do more research and more thoughts into it. Here are some questions. Here are some thoughts and aspects. How far are you willing to, that's going down the process? I know it works because everybody's different. So for me, baseline of that argument to myself, if everybody's different, motherfuckers who grew up in the same neighborhood, same house, went to sleep at the same time, woke up at the same time, ate the same food for 16, 20, damn near 18 years. But the way that they're taking that information is totally different than the other person. The way that I am, like I made it, like here's a joke. The running joke with me, for me now is I'm the oldest without the children. I lived the wildest. But my wild days were in structure. My wild days were in the fear of structure. So living in the fear of structure, I created my phases in structure. I created my phases through structure. So the wilding out that I did, the shit that I did, it was always attached to a structure. When I was in the under that street shit, it was based on the highest aptitude of structure. The older school prevalences. That gave me, remember, all your feelings are valid. I feel like I had to be a part of the streets and I feel like I had to do this. Your shit's valid, but where is it coming from? Why were you able to gravitate towards it? Why were you able to create the infrastructure around this? One we all talk about the truth is the shit in that space. It's because where were you able to structure that from in the first place? One of the hardest things when we're sitting down in that session is sitting with your this thought that you have created, this thought, this ideal, this term of events, your relationships, everything that you're doing. The reason that all of it coincides is because of core points. Some of those core points can be in the present life. Some of those can be energetically from past lives. You feel what I'm saying? Some of them can be not quite finished. Some of them could have fully played out. But you're not going to know that until you're able to acknowledge it. You're not going to be able to understand it until you're able to acknowledge it. You feel what I'm saying? Because without that acknowledgement, I can't go through the process of acceptance. Therefore, I can't see why it didn't work in the first place. I know why none of the work that I did prior to what I do now, why it didn't work. And let me correct that. It's not that it didn't work. It would never yield in the sense of the intangibles in which I have yielded, which have been yielded from me being in my purpose. That's the key to your infrastructure. The key to my infrastructure is how many intangible elements, how many intangible aspects of who I am can be demonstrated and magnified through my purpose. It's the natural form for rebellious. I am naturally rebellious. I will not do things, but now I'm not doing things based on rebellious reaction. I'm doing things based on rebellious response. Meaning, for me, for example, my emotional wave is a tribal wave. It's in human design. That means my shit builds up, then it goes back down. That means I know that I must follow the feelings and my emotions and energetics in that flow. I must understand and build out into that flow of building up to something. That means I require structure. That means my rebellious nature is to anything that opposes me creating structure. You know what I'm saying? That means anything that opposes my discipline is what I'm going to rebel against. I'm going to say no against. Now, before that point, I was just trying to attach. Before these points, I was trying to attach to anything that accepted what I did. This is what most of us do earlier on. You're trying to find everything to accept you. You're trying to find that group, trying to find that friend, trying to find that relationship. Yeah, I'm here now, so that... No. If you're still finding yourself trying to find things, You're not in acquirement to the aspects of the work. You're not doing what is necessary. There's something coming up to you that you're not doing, that you're not sitting with, that you're not working on. That's what that is. That heavy sense of conflict, feeling, that impending obsessive feeling that you need to say things to the people and you can't simplify that shit, is letting you know where the fuck you need to sit. I'm not worried about how my shit is presented anymore. So in me not worrying about how my shit is presented, I am able to demonstrate naturally inside of that space, because everything that I do before this and after this are in sync with what I do for that space in the aspect for the day. Every session that I had before this point were instruments in leading me to this point. I'm no longer looking for the external dialogues to set the terms for what I do now. I'm not looking for, the next great trend. That's not me. If the trend has something to do with the things that I do, then I'll look into it. I'll do some research on it. Take what I need, leave what I don't. Leave what I don't need. But I'm not dependent on that. This is because I've created my structure to where it's interdependent. I've created my structures. I've created my behavior is rooted to my behavior is interdependence. Rooted to my patterns is interdependence. Rooted to my habits is interdependence. That means with or without something being present inside of that space, I'm already going to do it. I'm fully aware, fully confident inside of that space. If you don't like it, you don't like it. It's not something I'm like, but why don't you like this? Or I'm no longer one of those, well, you're one of those people. I have my thought, my ideal. I can stand strongly with it. I can thoroughly express, and we can have that conversation. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm not trying to convince you or convince or convert you in my conversation. This is when we start understanding your tones. You ever notice somebody that's really confident, ain't trying to convince you of shit, but when they leave, you oh my God, I still want to go? That's what I'm working towards. I'm no longer working towards trying to convince you. See, in the beginning of my process, the beginning of my works, and coming and creating my brand and my platform where I'm at now, I had every single day, I had to honor that feeling that I felt like I needed to go live every day. And I did. I went live every single day. I made entire catalyst of shows. But the reason that I did that was not rooted to being accepted or rejected. What that was rooted to of me going live every day, me every Friday doing a lecture on live, all these aspects is because my mentor told me, don't nobody fucking know you as an advisor, a spiritual advisor, a mentor, a coach, a therapist. Nobody know you as that shit. That was one. And for two, during that same time when COVID dropped off, and I was out of work for 2 months, pretty much. I was out of work for about 2 months. My homegirl told me at that time, she was like, you should do daily what you do daily, but where work usually would go into, that's where you put in your shit. So for 30 to 60 days straight, I literally went through every single day whether it was doing lives, whatever it may have been. It wasn't, and here's the key. Here's the key to the aspects of the experience of the process. It was not to gain anything other than the experience and the understanding. It wasn't for me to gain notoriety, going viral, getting money, none of those things. It was for none of those things. This was for me. It wasn't for me to convey a message to convince and convert anybody. The sole purpose, and still the sole purpose, core to my mission statement is, you can do whatever the fuck you want, but you must accept what comes with it. And if you have not yet acknowledged why you feel the need to do something, guaranteed you will not accept what comes with it. You will not accept what comes with it. Your transparency will be trash. Your confidence is based on your transparency and vulnerability. The longer that I'm able to maintain myself in my states of, the longer I'm able to stay in the state of awareness of vulnerability and my transparency, I realized how strong I was getting. Because my confidence was in that space. I realized how strong I was getting. I realized my tone started changing. The voice that I tried to hide ever since I was 15, 16 started coming out. I tried to hide these tones. I wasn't confident in it. Because I'm watching the movie. You know, you watch the movie, you see people get picked. You're allowing the external environments to create the sense of impotency within inside of yourself. Because the only reason you're able to attach to those things is because they're attached to your infrastructure or your space. You getting fucked up at the house, you getting fucked up outside. And that's because that's what you're used to. That infrastructure, the art of that provision is based on your level of your infrastructure. If your infrastructure is in the building phases, all you're going to be able to offer is diagrams. When I was in the building phase, all I could offer you was readings. When I was in the building phase, that initial building phase, charts, human design charts, natal charts, readings, spiritual baths, still do spiritual baths, things of that nature. That's all I was able to provide you. I wasn't in a space to provide you a conversation or provide you therapy. Yeah, I had the tools, but I didn't build out the foundation yet. So then, as it increased and I was building out the infrastructure, then became the aspect, because if I can't speak to you in this public forum like this, how am I going to speak to you in that private sense one-on-one? I understand the tones are going to be different, but I must create the contrast. This creates a contrast. How I speak and how rarely I speak right now, it sets the tone in alignment to how you access me. You must set that tone. I must set the tone of how you access this and who is able to access this. I must use the discernment in not everybody can enter this space. Not everybody can be here. I must go in opposition to what I used to. I want to have my heart out for everybody. That's not even, my heart's always open. That I'm not denying that my heart is not always open. I'm not denying that my heart is not always open. Let me help you understand that. But being that my heart is always open, naturally it creates the infrastructure in which you're able to access it. I don't have to think about guarding my heart, protecting my energy, because best and believe that naturally comes into itself. Because I'm doing that internal, continually doing that internal work. I can do less and less and less and less. Now, less is more. Now I can create. Now, as you evolve and you advance, this is where we think about the relationships, the friendships, the ideals, the business, the partnerships, the purposes, how you want to move. This is where those things come in, because you've learned the inner workings of you. So you know how your inner workings work inside of these spaces. I know that if I go into a space, I can be invisible as fuck. I'm not worried about being seen inside of that space, because that space doesn't warrant that. The space in where it's warranted for me to be is where I will be. The spaces where it's not warranted for me to be, that's not where I'm going to be. This is not based on the physical form. This is based on the visibility. In this space, I'm very visible. In spaces over here, I'm invisible. I'm no longer invisible. The visibility and the invisibility are natural. Remember, these are natural occurrences. It's what I'm attaching to it. If I attach my visibility to rejection, abandonment, separation issues, anxious avoidance, disorganized attachment, whatever attachment style, and go through the psychological points that we go through in the sessions, then that's the only time it's gonna pop up. I'm gonna be like the kid on Big Daddy. And I'll put on my glasses and I'm invisible. The main part of everything that you're doing is a lot of times when you're doing these things is to make yourself invisible. So now you have something to blame. You have something to project it upon. And it's easy to project and lay things on an infrastructure that will always chime off to it because that infrastructure is created for it. I've created an entirely different infrastructure. My infrastructure interlays to when I go into a space, when I'm in a space, I'm always going to operate within the standards of my infrastructure. It's not about the other person. I put the first video in my story is, how about you dedicate to working on yourself for you, and I'm going to dedicate on working on myself for me. When I started applying that to myself, it changed how things came into my space, along with the work, along with sitting in that space, sitting in those spaces. It helped. Because I was like, how much better would I be or become if I was actually selfish with my energy and my time? And I was able to thoroughly demonstrate what that meant and what that was. How much stronger would I be if I was able to do that? Occult Alchemist, Zombie Vision, Occult Alchemy. Damn. Someone can ask me a question now and, hey, I'm thinking about doing this, this, and this. And I can give them honest feedback. I'm no longer trying to make myself sound like I know what I'm talking about. I can give them honest answers, honest questions. I can actually read the energy without it being doubt. If someone brings, like most of the time people come to me knowing my structure and they knowing me, when they come to me, they're coming to me to either ask a question or to be asked questions that they are not ready, they're not used to or able or have the ability or capacity to formulate to ask themselves. That's what I created my space for. Anything else outside of that, when it's met inside of my space with me, is going to be triggered as shit. It's going to be triggered as fuck. Going to be triggered as fuck. So, on both sides is something to learn. Both sides is something to learn. It's like, I remember in earlier fucking sessions. I remember my earlier fucking sessions and learning how to, in my earlier sessions of learning how to adjust how much time I gave each session, the frequency of sessions, how many sessions I do in a day, those learning dynamics. These are things that need to be learned inside the aspects of your practice, whatever you're doing. A lot of the things that I would falter into was me coming into my newfound confidence was found in earlier sessions. Earlier sessions, earlier dealings, earlier works. With male and females. With women, with men, it was usually the buck system. I'm either, who is this young ass dude? Or who are you to tell me this, and this? I've been doing this all my life. A lot of that pushback. And on the other end, it was the women that never really experienced someone having this actual conversation. They were looking for their yada. They were looking for that Prince Charming. I'm not charming whatsoever. You know what I'm saying? But I had to go through that process in order to understand how to, not to change how I deliver my information or speak, but to learn how to transmute and use that opening or that invitation in that space to generate what is necessary to be planted inside of that space. You know what I'm saying? And as you learn these aspects, this is how you create your infrastructure. Because your infrastructure can be tweaked. Remember, your purpose can be tweaked and looked at awkwardly, but it's only based on, those are all natural aspects in which to build out your space. As I build out my structure, as I build out how I move, it is a lot different. It requires a lot more discipline. It requires a lot more discipline to operate in this optimum sense. So understanding that comes with the push and pull, the natural push and pull of things. But if you have not created an infrastructure or a system inside of that space to handle that, that's the shit that keep fucking you up. That's why you'll feel lonely. That's why you feel that if you have not created those cadences, that infrastructure inside of your system, that's why you feel lonely. You feel lonely because you're not used to expressing yourself. You're only used to expressing yourself one way. But if you're a multifaceted being, then you can express yourself in multiple ways. Which ways stand out to you, and which ones are the most congruent with where you are at with yourself? What are you trying to... Are you trying to receive something for your efforts? Effort don't mean shit. Every coach on the planet will tell you effort don't mean shit. Because it doesn't. Effort is the lowest form of the aspects of your work in building the infrastructure. That's the learning phase. I put in effort to wake up every day at 4 a.m. If I go in expecting myself to get praised for waking up at 4 a.m., the moment that I get praised for waking up at 4 a.m., I'm going to stop getting up at 4 a.m. I'm going to try to pull in whatever gave me that praise and try to use it. If I get challenged for waking up at 4 a.m., I'm going to pull that in. Whichever side that I'm looking at is the side I'm going to pull in. You feel what I'm saying? You're stopping yourself. You're putting yourself in the position to stop yourself. You're getting the things that you're exactly what is necessary or necessity inside of your space, and you're trying the natural cadences, whether you're trying to bring everybody along for the ride so you're not alone, or you have always been looked at as alone so you're trying to get someone to understand you, or you're used to operating in a sense of being a bully, so to speak. That means you're used to whatever you say goes because you're doing this and you're doing this and you're doing this. If I'm doing all these, you're building out spaces to stay emotionally impotent in, to where your performance cannot be challenged. Your performance cannot be challenged. Your performance cannot be looked at, viewed, or be like, yo, like, you got to stop doing that shit over there. This is what you become used to. You have become used to this type of structuring because this type of structuring has always worked for you. Now you're changing your structure. Now your structure is changed. Now I look at my structure now and I realize that a lot of the things, this is the thing that fucks up a lot of us. There's elements that you have created in physical representation that work only in certain spaces. Until you understand what that is, you are not able to disconnect from it. You can dissociate from it all day, but you're not going to be able to detach from it. You will be able to tell that you're not able to detach from it because the natural emotion, whenever you're sitting there in that feeling, you feel like you need to be doing something is what? To run to the other end of the fucking room. That's what most of our that's what most of our notions are. Is to run to the other side of the room. Is to run to the other side of the spectrum. So if I'm always running to the other side of the room when I get excited, how do I know how I actually operate? If I'm always running if my only objective is to get to the other end of the extreme before time runs out, this false timer that I put into my head, that 90-second impulse, that 20 minutes, I had someone breathe the other day for the first time ever. And they did not realize how long 90 seconds was. I had them do the breathing exercise for 90 seconds. They didn't realize how long 90 seconds was. I could have walked. But when you have not created said infrastructure and you used to running to the other side, you don't even know where the fuck your flaw is at. You just know that you're tired. Damn, I'm tired. Damn, I'm tired. Man, I need to stop eating. Oh, I need to stop doing this. But, okay, that's all surface level. Why were you eating in the first place? Oh, man, I get off late and I be hungry. Do you be hungry? I'm not denying that you're hungry. That is a feeling. You're hungry. Where is that hunger coming from? The hunger that you're feeling is going to be told in what you're about to eat. Because you can be hungry and you can go to bed. If you're in a higher level of awareness, 9 times out of 10, you can eat a smoothie, eat some fruit. You're going to eat something that is more conducive to your diet inside of that space, in a higher space. Because you understand how digestion works. You feel what I'm saying? You're not going to put anything extra in the system when your system is supposed to be going through a charge. The lower your aspects of your emotional intelligence and the foundation in which you created your infrastructure, the more you're accustomed to eating the other shit. So then when it's time to go through that phase of, okay, I can't eat this and I shouldn't be eating this and I need to be doing this, but how do I get to this point? When you go through that process, that's the acceptance process. That means as soon as you eat it, you're like, damn it, I shouldn't have ate that. But I needed to eat that to tell myself, because I'm hard-headed, you need to have that conversation. And if you're not used to having that conversation, that's where we get stuck at in the comprehension. The only reason you're not used to having that conversation is because you do not comprehend the benefits of that conversation. One of the biggest things that I get in every time someone sets up a consultation, a reading or a consultation with me, is they'll always say, what do I need to bring? What do I need to expect? Anything that I need to do to prepare? And they're almost dumbfounded when I say nothing. Don't do anything. Show up as you. Just show up. Enter the call. I'm gonna give you the spit. I'm gonna give you a little background, a little breakdown of how it works, and then we're gonna go from there. In me being able to tell you to come in with nothing, automatically your initial trigger, which shows me how to write out the plan, our action plan, or the summary to an action plan suggestion, is everything I'm gonna need to know. Most people, after they get a certain level of information that's new to them, if you're not used to sitting in that process, used to running to the other side of the room, guess what you're going to do? You're going to ask me 975,000 fucking questions. You're going to ask me a bunch of fucking questions. And all of your questions are to get an answer. Let's say you ask 10 questions. Two of them questions you are not confident in saying. That's why the other 8 questions had to come first. I'm going to read that in you. I'm going to read it. And I'm going to bring those last 2 questions to the forefront. Because I'm going to ask them. Because I'm confident in asking the question. I'm teaching you right there from that space. That's the key. Your key in you coming into this space and you understanding yourself is understanding that I must understand what the fuck have I been providing to myself. Most of the shit that you provided to yourself is microwave shit. Let's just be honest. Even when it comes to the information that you get from Reels, the information that's if you look at the system is telling you exactly what it is to sustain this space. But instead of complaining, learn the contrast. I remember the first time when TikTok was really rolling. And the video was only about 1 to 3 minutes. Okay. I do a 15-minute video. I just do 5. Yeah. If I do a 15-minute video, that's going to be 5 3-minute clips. 5 3-minute clips. Ta-da. Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, Part 4, Part 5. All I have to do is make sure that I now put in that infrastructure together. All right, cool. Now I got to create taglines. I got to make this video. So as soon as I understand that it takes 90 seconds of an impulse, I understand the 90-second impulse. So the thing that I say in the beginning of this video has to sting. It doesn't have to sting for 90. It doesn't have to sting in last 90 seconds. It must trigger that emotion that is that natural emotion that is naturally 90 seconds. And if a person is not used to that, that dictates the reason of the video. I understand how to use the interjectics. I understand how to manipulate and use the interjectics. I understand how to make the post. So in that aspect of that infrastructure is in that infrastructure gives me a wider span of the ability to do things in that space. This is one of the major keys in facilitating and using your energy and using your purpose. People are like, but what if my purpose don't You're thinking too small. You're trying to make your purpose the job, and your purpose is the core of the source from you. My infrastructure is built around from my purpose. My purpose at the core is my mission, those statements of that space. So my infrastructure is built around that. So everything that I'm doing leads to that in some way, shape, or form. It's not about trying to convince others of why you do it. It's you doing it. But you got to start at the base. You got to start at the base with yourself. You got to start at that. You got to start in that position of base with yourself. You have to start making that investment into you. You got to start making, nigga, I am investing into myself and I'm truly sitting in this space. But Lucy, what about having fun? And this shit fun as fuck for me. If you're not having fun doing your work, even when it is it's giving you those breakdowns, you still should have this aspect of the enjoyment of your healing. You still have to be able to sit with the enjoyment in this space. The only reason that you have a lack of enjoyment or it doesn't feel okay is because you're trying to treat it as something that is separate, and you're still trying to separate it. And so you're still trying to separate to avoid the authority that is accountability. That's the impotence. See, you're trying to do it from an angle to separate from the authority of accountability, because that would mean that, damn, I am responsible and I gotta check myself. That means it's going to take a little bit longer because I got to sit down because I don't know what this is. That means I have to go do this because I don't know what this is. That's the key. That's the key to the elements in the space. Those are the keys. What was I about to say? The class is still available. To active clients, the price, yesterday's price is not today's price. To active clients now, in order to enter the class, unless we've had a conversation, having a conversation, so to speak, clients and active clients and active people, that means if you had a service with me actively, and it did not I'm going to give the disclaimer. If you have had active services with me that were outside of consultations, and I did not send you a recommendation for further work, the client price of $65 is for you. That's for you. If I have sent you, we have had a consultation, and I have sent you recommendations for work to be done and the things that we need to tap into, if you trying to get into this class, it's now 100 and it's. Let me wait. Time out. Yeah, I be forgetting my own stuff sometimes because I used to be doing stuff. No. Well, yeah, the prices went up. You got to pay that. You're going to pay that 100. It's 100. It's 120. I want to say 120 for that aspect. The reason why I do this, the reason why I've done this for the aspects of any of my classes, if you took in any of my classes, whether you're watching now or you watched before, I'm very structured in the way that I structure out my classes. The last thing that I need, or the last thing that I want to happen or have to happen is I have clients that are actively I'm working with in a class with people that have not done any type of work. That's something that I will not do. If you have not done any type of work on yourself, you're not working on yourself, you're not going to come. This is not a class based on answers. That simplifies. This is not a class based on answers. This is not a class based on answers to your escapism, your abandonment wounds, your abandonment issues. This is not a class for that. This is not a class for your rejection, your lack of intimacy. This is not the class for that. This is not the class for that. This is not the class for that. What this class is designed to do is in partnership with everything that I've been teaching all this time. This is what this class is for. This is an interactive class around everybody that open up and into that and be like, okay, cool. Yeah, well, I never thought about it that way in that space. That's what this class is for. Yeah. All of the services from human design, natal charts, energy, readings, energy work services, consultations, mentorship, advisory. All of that is available on the site. You can inbox me. I always have one rule of thumb for my inbox. Don't start with, I got this, because I'm going to ignore your message. Introduce yourself. Greetings. Introduce yourself to my fucking inbox. I don't know you. You don't know me. Introduce yourself. Set the tone and pace for which you want to be received. Let's start building your infrastructure. From the beginning, when you start working with me, we're working on how to build out an infrastructure. Because you're not going to be able to do anything else until we have you're not going to be, you can do whatever thou wilt, but you will not yield the unfathomable results of building out that infrastructure. I promise you. I can guarantee that. I threw a card. Let me go grab it. I'm going to do a little quick reading. The Five of Wands. The Five of Wands represents, this is a decision that you have been either putting off or consistently been revisited with, that you haven't fully come to terms with. Six of Cups. Six of Cups represents the pocketing of the conviction. There's a part of you or parts of you that are still locked within the convictions. And when this moment of this decision comes up, those convictions get challenged. But I'm gonna give you some key game. Give you some game. It's an opportunity. Knave represents opportunity. Knaves represent the opportunity of. Now, in that opportunity for grounding, pentacles represent the earth. For that grounding and the planting. Your convictions, your old convictions of what you're trying to plant into, you've not been able to, they've been barren for a while. Let me just be honest. They've been barren for a while. They have not yielded the results, and the results that they're yielding are not working. The conversation that you keep trying to invest into is not working. The way that you approach the things is not yielding the same result that it used to yield back then. Here's the wild part about that. It never did. This is one thing that I had to understand. I'm going to help you understand. It never did. It never worked. It never worked. It never worked in your best favor. It worked in the favor of your convictions. When things work in the favor of our convictions, based on it becomes an expectation. Remember how I just said the reason why you don't do certain things is because of the fear of the authority of accountability. So you're trying to avoid that. And the more that you avoid that, you create responsibilities. This is where most of the shit happens inside of your life. You keep trying to create these responsibilities for the lack of authority. Because the more authority that I held over my life, the less responsibilities that I needed. The less responsibilities that I needed or felt I needed to create. The less space I needed to create for responsibilities. And that leads into the aspects of that Five of Cups. Another conviction card. It's double down. It's double down. Double down. You're seeing it as, if I make this choice, if I make this decision, it's going to put me in a position. You're not afraid of the position that it's going to put you in. You are in fear of the position in which it puts you in its truest form. It's going to shred you of anything that's based on anything of the old convictions. The way that you viewed everything from, and the reason we're talking about this because we're talking about the class and Tantra healing, the way that you view sexuality has to change. The way that you view how you make money has to change. The way that you view relationships has to change. The way that you view these things has to change. The way that you receive things in your life has to change. You can't keep doing things. One of the things I had to understand for myself before I pulled this last card that actually fits in, you know, I read the cards before. If you're familiar, I read the energy before I read the card. Is I put myself under so much dynamic pressure based on those old convictions to keep myself attached to old spaces. And the reason that I kept myself attached to old spaces is because at the end of the day, I knew the price of that space. I knew the price of, at a certain point in time, going back to my people's places and my people's house and going around old family members, old friends. I knew the price. And because I knew the price, I knew exactly how to use that price in my advantage. I knew exactly how to profit from it. I knew that, okay, let's use an example. 6 months over there meant I needed to go through the first year of speculation. The profit. I had to go through the profits of speculation of why I left in the first place. Why I was hurting in the first place. And then I had to go through the other, that was the first 6 months, just to get to 3 months of the contemplation of why I'm in this space, just to stay in that space for 6 months. So I'm going through that first 6 months, then that first 3 months to cover that first 6 months. Then by the end of that 6 months, when that shit becomes too much to bear, that Ten of Swords, when it becomes too much to bear, what's the first thing you want to do in most of your situations? Every situation some shit happened to you, what's the first thing you want to do most times? You want to go out swinging. You want to acknowledge, you want to say everything, you want to provide you want to provide a reason why not to fuck with you. You want to provide a reason why to fuck with you, why you're who you are. You want to stand tall on that reason. Problem is, all of this is based on the old convictions. You're stuck in trying to provide provision to the old convictions of yourself. You haven't the adjustment or the learning process that you have to go through is what you're trying to put this into to impede into it, which leads to the Eight of Swords, Eight of Coins. You're used to the cycle that matches this. If we look in the top half of that cycle, it is the idea, and you're immediately used to putting that idea together. You're noticing that the ideas that you're trying to put together now, they're not seamlessly starting to work because they're not meant for that space. You're noticing that even though they're coming rapidly, even though the idea can be coming more rapidly, the put together of it is happening more slow. It's happening slower. You're not able to attach to and put it together and make it work like you're used to. It's because those ideas are coming from the ideas are not coming from the old convictions. Once you've expanded, we know the line. Once you have expanded your mind, it cannot go back to the original dimensions. You're still trying to go back to the original dimensions. You want the original dimensions and what you got from the original dimensions, which looks cute, but in reality, it's not going to work there. Because you've been exposed to something that's different. You've been exposed to ideas, people, places, and ideals that don't operate there. You see them as you see them, but you have not accepted them as who they are. They are the fulfillment of the authority. I'm a fulfillment of authority. You feel what I'm saying? I'm not an apparition of your trauma. You feel me? And we're going to get into that later on in the week. I'm not an apparition of your trauma. I am a fulfillment of the work. That's where a lot of us get the infrastructure confused. And you're not able to perform inside of a certain space. Or it's not giving you, because I am a fulfillment of the authority. I am a fulfillment of my authorities and my purpose. The more fulfilled I am in my authorities and my purpose, the greater I'm able to move more fluidly. The less that I'm able to operate in the authority, I'll keep trying to get the responsibilities. That means I won't take the authority. I'm only going to have I'll take the responsibilities, but I can't take the authority because I haven't built myself up to that space yet. Taking that authority means I got to let go of some shit. I'm not ready to let go of all that. I'm not ready to let go of the bullshit. And this goes into the aspects of the 7 wands. I'm going to leave it on the 7 of wands. 7 wands represents the decision based on peace. You're now stepping into the space of peace. Now your idea of peace your idea of peace is going to be challenged. If it's not been challenged, if it's not being challenged, your idea of peace is being challenged. Guess what? Peace has to be cultivated. Peace has to be worked upon. Peace is not one of those things that I'm at peace because you're sitting down. No. Peace has to be cultivated. What doesn't have to be cultivated? Neutrality. You not showing up to the party? Neutrality. You having the reason and standing on your conviction and your reason for not going to the party? Peace. Peace seems like violence to the ones that do not demonstrate peace. Me being peaceful as fuck, damn right, the way that I demonstrate peace to myself, alone time, cultivating my energy, working on myself, staying to myself, drives other motherfuckers crazy. It is violence to them. Why the fuck would you do that? Why would you not do this? Why would you not do this? It is fucking sophisticated violence to them. But I'm at peace. I don't have to say, okay, I need to go because these niggas. No, I don't do that shit anymore. I'm out of that phase. Once again, I'm out of that phase. I built out the infrastructure. But I desire you to be the fucking best. Again, the class for right now, anybody watching the video within the next few days, to get into the class is $50. Let's just put it like that. To get in the class is $50. That's up until, we'll say till Saturday, Sambi, the day of me. Hello, Sambi. Day of Saturday, day of Sambi. Yep, we'll do the class for $50. Anything after that, boom, you out. You can't get in. Or you have to pay the regular price. Every other thing, such as consultations, everything else, website, inbox. For my clients, one's watching, one's gonna watch, one's haven't watched. For my clients, if you bring me a person or rep, because I'm starting referral, the referral program, that person must be, if let's say for example, if you bring somebody to me for a reading, it's a certain, you get a certain percentage off of a service. If you bring someone into me that you says needs counseling, advisory, mentorship, therapy, and they come to me, in order you get the initial referral, you'll get an initial referral. That's it. Before I finish, let me finish this thought real quick. In the space for myself, sitting in that space, you get the referral. If the person is going through the series of sessions for themselves, as long as they're active inside of it, this is you become an the aspect of my referral program is you become an accountability coach. And I will be working with you indirectly with them confidentially to ensure that they're going to their services. They're going to their things. Accountability worship. Let me read everything. I get yes. If I know in my fucking head I can throw a 7-piece combination in my mind, and I can just look at this person, and before even throwing one punch in the mental state, I can look at how this person stands. I can look at how this person walks. How I can break this person down mentally because there's no blockages with. I'm not doing it from projection. The only thing that makes you want to test if you can throw the punch is because there's a blockage there. There is a limiter that you put into position that you need to work through, which is okay. That's a part of the process. I'm at a point I don't have to throw the punch anymore. I know how to throw the punch anymore. I know that I can throw the punch. I know the punch is going to land. I know exactly what it's going to do. I know it. But because I'm no longer stuck inside of that space, guess what? Now the spaces do not align with me having to throw the punch. The spaces do not align with me having to explain myself, over-explain myself, or do shit that I don't need to do. Because I'm now, the infrastructure's changed. But I desire you to be the fucking best. I desire you to be the fucking best. But it takes you investing into you. It takes you understanding that this healing process is destructive. You are deserving, but you are not entitled. The faith without the internal work is dead. And that means that when you sitting inside of this space and you're trying to avoid being transparent with yourself, it only works in certain spaces. You can't be you cannot. You can try. Please try. We as the Legion, we welcome you the challenge to try to not be transparent. We warrant the fucking try. Because all you're going to do is hurt yourself. You're going to cause the crack. The crack's going to happen faster. The rip's going to happen faster. The Band-Aid's going to come off faster. The more that you try to fight it, the harder that shit going to hurt when it come off. But that's why you're in the space and you're dealing with us. You know what I'm saying? You're in the dealings, you're in the right space. Remove if I do it for a certain amount of time, or if I don't do this, or if I say this and I don't say this, say what the fuck you want to really say. Allow it to be challenged. There's nothing that I'm not willing to say that I'm not willing to get challenged. That's a big That's a big part, especially with the aspect of developing outside of insecurity. Because once you start sitting in that space, you start realizing that you really weren't as insecure as you. I really wasn't as insecure as I thought. I just was not used to following my initial thought. If my initial thought told me not to do some shit, if my initial thought was not to do some shit, then maybe I should follow that. In the same instance, if my initial thought was to do some shit, I'm still going to question it. Whether or not I'm questioning both sides. But the way that I'm questioning these elements is to build out the space rather than to gain an answer. Because what if you don't care? And What if you don't eat broccoli? And? You know what I'm saying? But yeah, I'm about to get out of here. Got some paperwork I need to do. I got some paperwork to do. Got things I need to do. Yeah. I love you. We love us. I'll share.